It's a rift zone. It's fast moving terrain because you're in an earthquake.
Hey everyone, my name's Sarah Moore and we're here on the Sunshine Coast for the Value Bikes field trip. With me here is the Marin Rift Zone 3, which we're testing in the full suspension category under $3,000. It retails for $2,849. It has 125 millimeters of rear travel, 130 millimeter fork, and 29er wheels. The California brand says it's the ideal bike for pushing limits both up and down the trail and for setting personal records. The Rift Zone comes in 4 sizes, small through extra large, and we've got a medium on test here. The aluminum frame has internal cable routing in the front triangle but not the rear triangle, boost spacing, and room for a water bottle in all sizes. It has a threaded bottom bracket where you'll also find the ISCG mounts. One thing this bike doesn't have is a down tube protector, and there's also very minimal protection on the chainstay. Let's take a look at the geometry. Our test bike has a 65.5 degree head tube angle and a 76 degree seat tube angle, which is in line with the other bikes that we're testing here in the trail category. Our size medium has a 455 millimeter reach and a 1,186 millimeter wheelbase. It has short 425 millimeter chainstays. The Rift Zone's 125 millimeters of rear travel are controlled by Marin's multi-track suspension design, a single pivot linkage driven design. The frame fits a 30.9 dropper with a size small getting 125 millimeters of drop all the way up to 175 millimeters on the extra large size. Our test bike here is the Marin Rift Zone 293, which comes with a 130mm Marzocchi Z2 fork, a Fox Float DPS rear shock, Shimano SLX drivetrain, and Shimano Dior 4-piston brakes. There's no Maxxis or Schwalbe here, with the Rift Zone sporting V-Tire Co. rubber. The whole bike weighs 33 pounds and 5 ounces and retails for $2,849. That's it for the details. Let's look at how this bike rides out on the trail.
All right, Sarah, it's time to talk about how the Marin rides. But first, as always, let's go over setup. What did you do?
Well, we set up the suspension according to the manufacturer's suggested settings, and then we don't have control tires for any of these bikes, but we did make sure that we had the same tire pressure in all the tires, so we set them at 21, 23 PSI and good to roll.
All right, let's talk about climbing. That's the first thing.
I thought the position was really good for getting through kind of windy sections of single track. It feels very efficient, sometimes to a fault. You know, you are losing traction on some of the rougher stuff. But if you're on a gravel road or a smoother section of trail, it's super efficient. It feels like a lot of energy that you're putting into the bike is just helping you go forward down the trail.
So it sounds like the Marin and the Ibis are kind of in that same family of bikes where the manufacturers have favored speed and efficiency over that forgiveness and all-out traction. And that's just the ticket for a lot of riders, no doubt about that. But in those settings where you need some extra bite, maybe it doesn't quite have the grip that the Giant and the Polygon has, eh?
Exactly, yeah. The Polygon and the Giant have a lot more active suspension. You're not bouncing off the roots as much. You're kind of just making your way up through them. It's more comfortable. You can stay seated. Whereas the Marin, you kind of want to stand up, put some power on the pedals, and it'll reward a rider who wants to accelerate up the climbs.
Yeah, I thought the same thing about the Marin too. There were times when I would be climbing up the hill and there'd be coming up and there'd be lots of steps and things like that. And on the other bikes, on the Giant and the Polygon, I would just stay in the seat because I'm lazy. Just stay in the seat, just tractor up the things.
Yeah.
Whereas on the Ibis and the Marin, I was more likely to get out of the seat and maybe help that rear wheel up over those things a little bit. So it doesn't feel like quite a momentum stopper.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Okay, it's time to talk descending now. And Sarah, when I was riding that bike, there were times that it definitely felt a lot more nervous than some of the other full suspension bikes here. And I should preface that by saying that one of our test laps is a pretty high speed trail full of rocks and roots. And that's exactly where the Marin didn't feel that great, right?
Yeah, at high speeds, it feels less planted, a little more nervous. It's got, quick steering, it feels precise, but that's not necessarily a good thing here.
You're not gonna frame that as being nimble?
Oh yeah, it's a nimble bike. I'd say it comes from a cross-country background. Like I was reading the marketing copy and they're saying it's more capable than a cross-country bike, which, the Polygon's not even gonna have the word cross-country anywhere near its marketing copy,
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I think, the way that the Marin is coming about it is, it's more capable than a cross-country bike, and they're not wrong there.
No.
But it's not the Polygon on the descents. It's not the DaVinci Marshall on the descents.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that for sure. I mean, this is a short travel trail bike, and it isn't meant to crush those super rough, fast, chundery descents. There's no doubt about that. In those settings, the bike doesn't feel like it's sticking to the ground as much as it should, or as much as I hope it would. And it just feels nervous and like it doesn't have quite the same amount of traction. But the flip side to that is you get it on some smoother stuff, some more playful stuff. I mean, in those settings, the bike's a lot of fun.
Yeah, if you're kind of going through like trails that go up and down and you're kind of accelerating out of one part into the next part, it carries its speed really well. And you kind of want to like get on the pedals and accelerate up the climb. If there's like a downhill into a climb, it's a really fun bike to ride through that kind of terrain. Yeah,
in the same vein as the Ripley, I mean, a bike like this really suits that sort of rolling terrain. I'm picturing the Middle America stuff, where you got short climbs, short descents, but you have a few hundred of them on your ride. And if you work on those climbs, you carry momentum over the tops of them, and therefore you're going faster on the downs, carrying more speed. That's where a bike like the Marin is definitely going to be more at home.
It's time to talk about the components. Let's start with some of the good things.
Yeah, the big thing for me is that Z2 fork on the front of the bike. It worked really, really well. It doesn't have all the adjustments, but it does everything that you're going to need it to for like half the price. So there you go. The other thing for me is that SLX drivetrain and the 4-piston brakes. Both of those worked absolutely perfect, especially that SLX drivetrain. There's zero need to upgrade, and I mean, when you do wear stuff out, don't upgrade, just buy the same SLX stuff. It works too well not to. My last call out has to be those V-Tire tires. It's not a name that you would usually think of if you're thinking about high-end tires, but they work extremely well. I've used them on other bikes before, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with them. Yeah.
And then if we talk about some of the things that aren't as good about the components.
Well, Marin has done a really good job speccing this bike. There's no argument about that. But for me, when I look at the cockpit, that stem and handlebar looks like it's from like 1997. It's gotta go. That doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely agree. Let's get into some of the pros and cons, starting with the good stuff.
The good thing for me, big one, it's a very efficient pedaling bike. And if you're the kind of rider who enjoys that in a bike, you don't want to reach out and flip the switch, well, that's a big plus for you. The other thing, we've mentioned it a few times already, I'm going to mention it again. Marin's done an amazing job of speccing this thing, haven't they? There's nothing really left to upgrade on that front, and that's a big deal if you're shelling out $2,800, and especially if this is one of your first mountain bikes. Cons, Sarah, what's the big one for you?
I mean, it's a pretty nervous descender. It's not as confidence inspiring as some of those other bikes that we've got here.
Right.
It's also pretty noisy with that chainstay, no protection.
Yeah. Definitely comparing it to some of these more modern, more forgiving trail bikes, it can't keep up to them on more demanding terrain. And hey, maybe the 125mm rift zone wasn't really intended for that either. If your terrain isn't super rough, that's not something that really should be of a concern to you. All right, Sarah, let's wrap up this rift zone review. Tell me your closing thoughts.
Yeah, so the Rift Zone is a bike that's going to suit somebody who wants an efficient bike. They're in fast rolling, less demanding terrain. Maybe somebody who comes from a cross-country background. They're going to be doing long days in the saddle. They're not really interested in going into really technical terrain. It's going to be a great bike.
All right, so that is it for our Marin Rift Zone 3 review. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our field trip value bike reviews, and we'll see you next time.